Yes. The semi-darkness that you see is such a fitting metaphor. Why? Because we're going to be talking about Burzum's new album that will be released in just a few short weeks. It's entitled Fallen. Now, of course, metal fans, and black metal fans especially, were rejoicing last year because Burzum returned with the album Belus. And while I gotta say, it's a very good album, it's certainly an album that sort of has good sides and bad sides. It's kind of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as far as I'm concerned. This is an album that definitely has the trademark characteristics that you would expect from a Burzum release. However, it's something where it seemed a little bit imbalanced. It was a little bit really predominated by the kind of lo-fi quality, which is something that's, we're semi-used to, but the material seemed average, I suppose. Now, if you guys remember the review that I did on it last year, well, average was pretty much good enough for anybody whenever it came to Burzum, considering most of the material that we heard while he was in prison was of the extremely ambient nature. Well, let's fast forward to, the future, because Fallen has not yet arrived. However, many people have heard it due to a lot of the stuff that has been found either on various websites or on YouTube, and you start to notice that this pattern has become a little bit more polished for Fallen. And by polished, I definitely don't mean that production has spiked through the roof or broken any sort of new Burzum records. No, not whatsoever. In fact, quite the opposite. Basically, they just took the lo-fi quality of Belus and just sort of cranked up the volume a little bit, polished that up a little bit, but still retained that same characteristic. So the result is that everything sounds a lot better, but it really hasn't exactly changed the way in which the music itself is made. The one thing that has changed, and most certainly for the better, is the material itself. It seemed as though that on Belus there was a lot more focus on, the lo-fi quality, him being back, and just trying to get some music out there. Whereas there seemed to be a little bit of a backdoor nature to the ambience, where it was not necessarily something that was a predominant focus point. Now, on this particular record, you still get that same raw black metal that you're used to on Burzum classics, such as Ask from all the way back in the early 1990s, but at the same time, you also get the ambience that has been so widely touted by Burzum fans and black metal fans alike. This is actually one of those albums where a little bit of simplicity is certainly going a long way, and that's something that you definitely get. This is a 7-track affair that's going to run right around 48 minutes whenever it's released. And let me tell you, the 7 tracks definitely give this album that feel of just enough. Now, there's a lot of other bands out there, there's a lot of other people that are able to make the 7-track and 48-minute long length kind of work, but the trap that a lot of bands seem to get into the habit of doing is having that 7-track affair, but making it run to 60 to 70 minutes long and just absolutely boring some of their listeners to death. Unless, of course, the material that they have spotted within is interesting enough to keep them engaged. A good example of a band that's able to do this well is, of course, Wolves in the Throne Room, that are able to have 4-track affairs that can run for more than 60 minutes, and of course they get rave reviews. With Fallen, however, this particular format works perfectly because of the simplicity that is involved on this particular record. Think back to Belus, and if you haven't heard Belus, then definitely go and listen to it. Think to track number 3 on Belus, if you're a Burzum fan and if you've listened to the record. You'll remember also, if you're a coverkillernation fan, that track number 3 off of Belus, I'm specifically not saying names because I'm terrible at pronouncing this stuff because it's in a different language. But if you remember that song, that was the song that I felt was kind of the apex of Belus's charm. It was the song that really did everything the best. It had the simplistic approach. It was something that built upon layers. It was something that recalled atmospheric ambience, and it was something that was constructed with a very good framework. Basically take that song, and for the very first 6 tracks, and including probably the most magnificently, the epic 6th track, which is 10 minutes and 10 seconds, and that's what you got laced throughout Fallen. And that's something that is very, very good for me, something that I really enjoy about this record, something that makes it a very positive record for me. But then you get to track number 7. Track number 7 is where this album actually, for some people, could take a turn for the worse, But for me, it actually built the score up a little bit. And that's because this is a track that is perhaps one of the most minimalist approaches that you can find to any sort of music. It's an instrumental. And let me tell you, there's a subtle charm here. Because it's very haunting. Because it's very minimalistic, as I mentioned. And there's just... I always talk about atmosphere. And because of the minimalism, the atmosphere to this is that there's a real fill-in-the-blank, or almost an uncertainty to it. And this is something that certainly works. We've always spoken about how Varg and Burzum are very akin to atmosphere and very akin to ambience. So why would this be no different? In fact, this is something that takes atmospheric minimalism, ambient minimalism, perhaps to a new level. And because of that, it actually boosts the score from this album from an 8.25 all the way up to an 8.5. This is certainly an album that you guys should check out. The polished nature of the sound, which, well, like I said, it's not that much, but it's certainly an improvement, is something that may tick off some traditional black metal and Burzum loyalists. However, it's something that I think was very necessary for the progression of these releases ever since he got out of prison. And secondly, the material on this record certainly seems a lot stronger on Belus, and that's because it is. Not to mention, there's a little bit more exploration. The minimalist last track, not to mention the way that he's able to focus the ambience within all of the 6 tracks instead of just kind of spattering it like paint right here or there like he was able to on Belus. Well, it just makes for a much better package overall, and I think it's going to be one that black metal fans are going to enjoy. So rejoice, black metal fans. Your Dark Lord, your Dark Savior, your minimalist mastermind is back. And don't forget to pick up Fallen whenever it's released. And if you can't find it, you can find it. Order the fucking thing. Jesus.